is your favorite TV star?
I have to say I love 24 and I love Jack Bauer.
What is the one sound that drives you crazy?
My boys burping at will at the dinner table. They tell me that in other countries it's a compliment. Don't think so.
What is your dream of happiness?
I wake up in the morning, the kids get out of bed before I even have to yell at them, and they get dressed in school clothes they've let me pick out for them to wear, and they come down into the kitchen where I'm whipping up some Pop-Tarts, and they get in the car, and on the way to the car, I overhear them saying to one another, "You take the front seat today." "No, you please, you take the front seat today." And then I wake up.
What is your favorite song?
His Eyes on the Sparrow, because I can say with conviction and confidence, I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm happy. I sing because I'm free.
How old were you when they knew you could sing?
My dad said I was maybe 2.5 years old when I sang my very first solo in church. I sang "Jesus Loves Me" and stood on a little platform so they could see me over the podium.
What is the one thing you would not want to live without?
Well, absolutely, I would not want to live without the grace of God. Most definitely. And my MAC foundation, which resembles the grace of God many mornings.
When you get to heaven, what is the first thing you're going to say to God?
What is the deal with menstrual cramps? Oh, yeah, and then I'll probably thank him for his love and grace.
Please welcome Sandi Patty.
I was 19. I had graduated from high school. Really knew what my dream for my life was going to be. I lived in California at the time, and just about every weekend I would make my way about an hour north from San Diego to Anaheim, California, and I would go to Disneyland. You see, my dream was to be a singer and a dancer at Disneyland. And I felt that I was just on the edge of my dream. I'd graduated, and I had spent so much time at the Disneyland parks. You know, back in the day, you could actually go to Disneyland, and if you didn't want to ride any rides, you could just walk into the park and go from singers to singers to singers, and that's exactly what I did. I went from one singing group to the next singing group and back and forth, and I knew all the words to all their songs. I knew all the moves to all their dances, and I would do them in my chair as I was watching, and I wanted to be in the Kids of the Kingdom. This was my dream. Well, I had gotten some information about an audition that they were holding, and I knew that this was just about to happen for me. I was so excited. I went to the audition. My mother played the piano for me. There were 3 judges kind of sitting in the front, and the rest of the contestants, so to speak, were all lined around the other 3 sides of the wall there in that room. And I sang my heart out. I did a Barbra Streisand medley that ended with "Don't Rain on My Parade." And everybody clapped, and the one judge just kind of even turned down the little corner of my sheet. And I thought, well, that's got to be a good sign, perhaps. And so they let us all know after the day had completed that they would send us a letter in the mail, you know, back when it was actually a real letter in the real mailbox delivered by a real mailman. And so they said it'd be about 3 weeks. So I waited very patiently for 3 weeks and no letter. I was really kind of full of myself and really thought Mickey was actually going to deliver the letter to me himself. But I waited 3 weeks, no letter, and finally I thought, well, I'll just give it another week and no letter. And then I thought, my letter has been lost in the mail. So I called the lady that I'd been talking to through this whole process, and I got her on the phone, and she said, "Oh, yes, Sandi, we remember you. Just one moment. Let me see what happened." And so she went and got my sheet and everything, and she said, "Oh, yes, yeah, I remember. Oh, yes, we loved your singing. And I see that, well, you didn't really move too well." And I said, you know, I didn't tell her this, but I grew up in the church, and it's not my fault. But she said, oh, Sandy, I see that we thought that you were just carrying a little bit too much weight for us. And so we can't use you at this time. Come back and audition, blah, 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 blah. Because honestly, I didn't hear anything after she said, you're fat and we don't want you. I was devastated. Here I thought I was on the edge of my dream, and I was on the edge of disaster. I went home and probably cried for about 3 days. I didn't know what to do. So I thought, I've got to come up with a new plan here. And so out of that disappointment, I decided to leave California and attend a little college in Indiana called Anderson University. Yay, go Ravens! And my parents had gone there, my grandfather had gone there, so there had been some history in our family, but I kind of took my heavy heart and went to Anderson. Well, I began to sing. I began to sing on campus. I began to do a lot of studio work, a lot of commercials and jingles and backup singing for different people's albums. I also taught piano lessons to help pay my way through school, and 2 of my students were Bill and Gloria Gaither's children. And so we began to get a little bit more acquainted. I also did a lot of studio work at his studio. And one day Bill called and said, Sandy, we are looking for a backup singer to travel with us on tour. Would you be interested? I said, wow, Bill, I am going to have to pray about that. Yes. And I began to travel with Bill and Gloria Gaither, and I traveled with them for 5 or 6 years. And during my time of singing backup for them and watching how they would interact with people on stage was like just a master class for me. It was amazing. And from time to time, they were very gracious to allow me to step to the edge of the stage. And there I would sing a brand new song at the time called We Shall Behold Him. Well, I can look back 30 years ago and see that whole Disneyland through different lenses now. Because while I thought that I knew my dream, and that I thought I was on the edge of my dream, and then that didn't happen, then there was the edge of disaster. Truly, as I look back, it was the edge of the divine for me. Because my life would have looked so much different had certain disappointments not come. And so looking back, I can see how God's divine hand was in all of that. And it wasn't that he was saying no to my dreams. It's just that he had already said yes to a dream for me that I couldn't see yet. That's how God works. And we can think about that when we look back. It's easier to see, so much easier to see. One of the dreams I've always kind of had was to be fit and trim, just like the Disneyland situation. I've always struggled with my weight. That has always been an issue for me. And as God has begun to help me peel the layers on the inside, to change those labels, those messages that we give ourselves of unlovely and ugly and fat and not lovable, to change those labels. God has helped me be able to do that as I peel away the emotional layers, that I've been able to really address the outside layers, because there's a lot of joy and celebration going on the inside of me in the last many years. And I was ready for the outside to look like that. So I've been on a journey, on a quest, and just in about the last 18 months, I have can't say lost, right? Because if you lose something, you're going to want to try to find it again. So I have released 75 pounds. I've tried everything, probably like all of you. And, I was at a really critical point in my health. And my doctor suggested, the lap band surgery. And I said, you know what? I just kind of feel like that's cheating God. She said, Sandy, let me just tell you something right now. If you don't do something, you are going to cheat your family because you're going to die too soon. And trust me, you are on that journey. Well, that definitely got my attention. And the day that I walked into the bariatric surgeon was really another edge for me. And I'm so very grateful. I kind of look at that day as my second birthday in a way. And it's what grace really should feel like in all of our hearts. That new beginning, that new adventure. We've lived in Indiana for many, many years, and just recently my husband was offered a new job in Oklahoma City. And so because we had kids in college and Anna's married, we kind of thought, well, we'll just take the two that are still remaining, Molly, who's a senior, and Sam, who's in 8th grade, and we'll just head on to Oklahoma to be a great new adventure. And Don and I were very excited about it. And as we got there, and we got a small little tiny house because, well, you know, we're not a family of 10 anymore. We were just a family of 4. And we were just loving the whole idea of new beginning and everything. And well, the kids in Indiana, they started feeling like we had abandoned them. And I just felt really bad. And all of a sudden, one by one, they all started coming out to Oklahoma. And that wasn't really in our plan, but... And so the walls of our little house began to feel a little bit closer in. And there was just a lot of stress that I guess I was beginning to experience, but I hadn't realized it. And my old coping mechanisms of eating my stress and my pain and my hurt away were not available to me anymore. And words really are the best thing to express what I'm feeling, but I'm not so good at that, and I'm learning that. And anyway, a lot of this stress was piling up in my heart, and finally one night it got so bad that I was rushed to the hospital thinking that I was going to have a heart attack. But it wasn't a heart attack, as it ended up, and they checked all of my vitals, and I've got the heart of a much younger woman. But what it was a panic attack. And the doctor said to me, Sandi, is there anything in your life that you're kind of stressed out about right now? And I said, where do you want me to start? And as I sat there on the edge of the hospital bed, I just began to weep. And I literally said out loud, there is not enough of me to go around. And then, almost as if I said that out loud, my mind flashed back to a few weeks prior to that hospital moment when I was at a dinner with my husband who goes to a lot of dinners because of the company that he works with, and I get to go along and be his arm candy. And we were sitting, and the gentleman was speaking about addiction, and he was talking about how he had been sober for 27 years through the death of his son, through many, many difficult seasons of life, but he remained sober. And at the end of his talk, he looked down at his wife and he said to her, you are enough for me. And then he said to his children, you are enough for me. And then he looked to heavenward and he said, God, you are enough for me. And then he said, I know that I am enough for you. I flashed back to that as I sat there on the edge of that hospital bed in great despair, realizing that I spin my world every day so fast, trying to be enough for everybody. You know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think as that gentleman spoke, that whatever our addiction is, whether it's food or people-pleasing or exercising or alcohol or one more meeting or whatever it may be, there's part of us that thinks, well, just one more and that will be enough. You know what? Just one more, that'll be enough. It will never be enough, ever. Until we can say, God, you are enough for me. And to realize I am enough for you.